Welcome to Balanced Black Girl. My name is Les. I am your host, and I appreciate you tapping in. So I'm currently doing a summer of all solo episodes where it is just me and you. We're talking about different ways to upgrade your life. This has been a big theme for me because I've been focusing a lot on my self-care and my own glow up leading up to a big birthday that I have coming up at the end of the summer. So I'm doing all solo episodes to share with you some of the things that I've been learning and implementing. And one of those big things has been archetype embodiment. And I want to talk a lot more about what that is and about how that has helped me in terms of fitness and wellness and work and social life. It's been a game changer. But before we do that, I want to start with some housekeeping items. First off, we have got a lot of Balance Baddies who have joined the family over on YouTube, which is amazing. Welcome. If you're new to Balance Black Girl, I'm so happy to have you. If you have recently found us on YouTube, or maybe a friend sent you a link to this episode and you have not yet subscribed to the show, please make sure you are subscribed. It helps us so much when you go to Apple or when you go to Spotify and you subscribe to the audio version of the show. And if you haven't yet already, make sure you leave us a rating and a review. If Balanced Black Girl has positively impacted your life in some way, I would love to hear about it. Takes just a second to drop me a 5 stars. And if you want to go like a little extra step, you can also leave a review just letting me know what you liked about the show and how it has helped you. I also want to say I share a lot of resources in these episodes, so I will often refer to books that I recommend or other episodes that I've done in the past. And we always link those things in the show notes because I don't want you to just listen to the episode and forget about it. I want you to be able to listen to the episode and apply what I'm talking about to your life. So if there's going to be a resource that's going to be helpful for you, I'm always going to link it in the show notes so that it's easy for you to take what you listen to here and implement it. So if I mention a book or if I mention a walking shoe or whatever it is, it's always going to be linked in the show notes or the YouTube description for you. So just some housekeeping things to keep in mind as you listen. Now, a few months ago, I had a really beautiful moment where I realized that my everyday regular life that I'm living right now could literally be taken out of the page of a journal that I used to write in. And I had that realization because I was cleaning up my apartment and I was going through some of my old journals and I was reading through some of the things that I was writing about and some of the things that I wanted to call in and how I wish my days looked. And I realized that right now, my days look exactly like that. Like what I used to dream about is regular AF to me right now. I used to really want to live in a bigger city. I used to want to have slow mornings where I didn't have a long commute to work and have to rush. I used to want to be able to take my time working out. I wanted to be able to work for myself. I wanted to have control over my own time. These are things that I would write about daily for years and dream about. And now that's like a degular Tuesday for me, which has been a really humbling experience to see a life that I wanted for so long come to fruition. And I started thinking more deeply about how did I do that? How did that happen? No, along the same time that I was thinking about that, I also started getting a lot of questions about fitness and working out and being consistent. Because if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I have kind of started ramping up my fitness content again. I actually started off creating fitness content like 10 years ago, and I go through different waves and seasons where I post more about it and post less about it. Recently, I've been posting more about fitness, and it has gotten some really good engagement, and so it's brought new people my way, and it's had people ask me a lot of questions about, well, how do you maintain consistency with working out? And as I was thinking through the answer to that so that I can create resources to be helpful for people, I actually realized that the same thing that has helped me be consistent with working out for the past 15 years is also the same thing that has taken what used to be my journal entries and made those things my daily life. It actually is the same concept. And that concept, as I mentioned earlier, is called archetype embodiment. So using fitness as an example, I get people ask me a lot, well, how do you stay motivated to work out? Or how do you work out consistently? Or how do you get yourself to do it when you don't want to? And at first I thought the answer was, well, you just get up and you just do it. And that's part of it, yes. Like you have to execute for anything that you want. But I realized it's because I created an identity of a person who works out. And at this point, I've been doing it for so long that for me, getting up and going to the gym or going on a walk or going to a workout class in my brain is literally the same thing as brushing my teeth or putting my contacts in. Like, it's just an automatic thing where I don't even think about it. I actually don't consider myself a particularly motivated person. I'm actually quite lazy. I'm a Leo. We're not maybe known as, we love to luxuriate and lay. But it is just a natural part of my identity where it's not even like I wake up and I'm so motivated to work out. It is just I have the identity of a person who works out. And as I was deconstructing why that is or how I was able to get there, I realized that I, throughout my entire wellness journey and entire adult life, have been doing archetype embodiment before I even realized it. And I'm going to walk you through what that is and how I've done it. So, archetype embodiment is essentially creating an archetype version of yourself, or like an alter ego version of you that identifies with the habits you want to implement, or that identifies with the job that you want to have, or the life that you want to have. Oftentimes, when we have a hard time either reaching our goals or staying consistent with something, it is because we are identifying as a version of ourselves who does not do those things. We are identifying with a version of ourselves who does not have that habit, or who does not have that job, or who does not have those friendships, or whatever it is that you are seeking. And so really the key to getting everything you want is learning how to identify as a version of yourself who does have those things. And when you don't yet have those things in your life, it can be hard to just act like you do. And that is where the idea of having an archetype or an alter ego that you can tap into comes into play. So an archetype is a version of yourself who has the things that you want, or who maybe has the strengths that you want, that you are able to tap into that energy from where you are to actually become that person. And a key example of this, or I think maybe the best example of this, of somebody doing this, is obviously our girl, Beyonce. If you think about Beyonce, you also think about the Sasha Fierce archetype. And if you go look at old interviews of Beyonce back when she used to do interviews, she would talk a lot about it. She would say that she was actually a very reserved and shy person, and that it was causing her to hold back a little bit on the stage because she felt uncomfortable being, sassy and bold and doing all of these things. And so she created this archetype that she named Sasha Fierce, who naturally was those things, who was sassy, who was sexy, who was bold. And so when Beyonce would get on the stage, she would not think of herself as herself. She would think of herself as Sasha Fierce. So she then didn't feel embarrassed to tap into that and leave that on the stage. And after decades of doing that, the two essentially became one, to the point where she doesn't really need Sasha Fierce anymore because she has now embodied those characteristics. So when you're thinking about archetype embodiment, I want you to think of the same thing. So what is that version of you who has those qualities that you need to have to get to where you want to be? And it can be super overwhelming to try to apply this to your entire life. So I recommend applying this to one area of your life at a time. I'm going to give you an example of how I have done this when it comes to fitness, when it comes to social life, and when it comes to work. But I don't necessarily recommend you try to do all of those things at once, because that's going to be really overwhelming and that's going to burn you out. So I recommend taking a look at your life, taking a look at your goals, taking a look at whatever area is most important to you right now that you really want to focus on and give your energy to, and start creating an archetype or an alter ego version of yourself to help you reach your goals in that one area. And then once you start feeling more confident in that one area, then that's going to permeate through other areas of your life, and you'll be able to apply that confidence elsewhere. Now, because I have a fitness background, I'm a little biased towards working out, and I'm a little biased towards thinking that most of us need to start with fitness, but that is only because I have seen the effects of fitness work in my own life. And I'm not just talking about the physical. I actually personally, even though I've been working out for so long, have never really had a major physical transformation. Like, I don't physically look that different now that I'm more fit than I did before I was fit, but the mental and emotional transformation has been key. It has been so important for me that if I would not have started that habit of working out seriously years ago, I would not be where I am today. This podcast would not exist. And that to me is even more important than the physical transformation. So I want to take you back a little bit to go through some examples of how I've applied this in my life, starting with fitness, because I'm always going to bring it back to fitness because I think that it is the foundation of getting everything you want. So my personal fitness journey started around the summer of 2010. And that was the summer that I was going into my senior year of college. I just started noticing that I was feeling really lethargic. I was feeling really tired. I didn't really have the energy to get through the workday. I was starting to work in corporate and it just wasn't really working for me. And so I became interested in exercise mainly because I was just trying to generate some energy. I was just trying to do anything I could to stay awake at my desk each day. And so I started with little things. I would walk more. I would start jogging. I would go on the elliptical at the rec center at school. Like I would do anything just to get moving a little bit. And I found that when I started moving, I did start getting more energy. I started getting a little more mental clarity. I started getting some of those endorphins that we all hear about. And so I continued on that path for a couple of years, but I didn't necessarily feel strong and I didn't necessarily feel fit or athletic, but I was getting better at moving and implementing moving in my life more often. So after about 2 years of being kind of a cardio bunny, where basically all I would do is like run, elliptical, spin, yoga, I was spending more and more time at the gym and I was starting to observe other people at the gym, particularly other women at the gym. And when I looked around the cardio section where I was with the other people who were on the ellipticals with me, I just noticed that the energy was entirely different from the women who were in the weight room. The energy of people who were on the cardio machines just seemed like they dreaded being there. They didn't really seem very happy with their workouts. They didn't seem particularly happy with their bodies. I would see people be kind of inconsistent and cycle in and out. But when I looked over at the weight room, the energy was so different. The women that were over there were so badass. They were so strong. It seemed like they actually enjoyed what they were doing. They were way more consistent. And I was like, oh, I want to be like them. And I remember there was one girl in particular who was around my age. So I was probably about 22 at this time, who's around my age, who was just such a badass. And she was doing these intense box jumps and she was doing kettlebell swings and cleans and presses and all of these things. She just looked so athletic and so strong. She looked like she was having so much fun. And I'm over here on the elliptical looking like I want what she's having. I want to be able to do that. But I had no idea where to start. And I also felt super, super intimidated. But I was also really intrigued and I knew that there was something in there that I wanted to tap into. And so I started going through this process of creating an archetype version of myself that could be my version of that girl who was doing the things that I admired. And so I ended up changing my entire approach to how I went to the gym and what I was doing at the gym. And so the first thing was I changed what time I was going to the gym. So I used to go to the gym at like 5 p.m. after work, peak traffic time with everybody when it was super crowded. So anytime I would try to like strength train or do something with weights, first of all, the weight room was full of people, usually dudes. I felt really intimidated. I felt like I looked kind of dumb, like I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. And it just really discouraged me from even going. So I decided to switch to go early in the morning when there was nobody there and I felt less self-conscious about experimenting and just reading through different machines and taking my time to learn what was there. So that was a really, really big thing that helped increase my confidence because ultimately this archetype was me wanting to be like a confident gym girl. And I felt a lot more confident if I was there when fewer people were looking. So that was a big one. Summer can be so hard on your hair. Whether you're rocking a protective style or styling your own hair each week, your hair deserves some TLC. Now, since the start of the year, I've been taking Nutrafol and it has helped my hair so much. And now is the perfect time of year to try it out. Sun, sweat, swimming, and SPF can put a lot of stress on our hair. Previously, I was experiencing quite a bit of shedding and breakage, and when I started taking Nutrafol at the beginning of the year, I noticed my hair shedding reduced so much, and my hair has been thicker and healthier. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding. Physician-formulated with drug-free ingredients, Nutrafol supplements support healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning, including stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism as they evolve throughout a woman's life. While many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 86% of women reported improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol Women's Hair Growth Supplement for 6 months. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code BALANCEDLESS. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code BALANCEDLESS. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code BALANCEDLESS. On any given day, we make countless decisions, and we are bombarded with so many choices. Sometimes it's nice to take a step back from overthinking and decision fatigue to be able to make an easy choice. And for me, when it comes to water, especially when I'm on the go, Smart Water is an easy choice. Now, when I don't drink enough water, I just feel off. And sometimes getting in enough water when you have a jam-packed schedule or are super active can feel challenging. So when I need to grab water on the go, I always reach for Smart Water. Now, I am constantly doing thing to thing, running from event to event, working out, trying workout classes, recording episodes at the studio, and traveling. So having water I can take with me that fits in my bag and helps me feel my best is essential. Smart Water is an easy choice for people looking to elevate in all areas of their lives in fitness and beyond. When it comes to living life, there is a lot to overthink, especially when it comes to work, wellness, getting adjusted in a new city, transitioning through life's seasons, but at least I don't have to overthink my water. Whether you're running miles or running meetings, Smart Water can help keep you hydrated throughout your active life. Life is full of choices, and Smart Water is a simple one. Visit drinksmartwater.com to learn more. So far, it's been a pretty sweaty summer, and when we're sweating, that means we need to make sure we're getting our electrolytes in. You lose water and sodium when you sweat, and both need to be replaced to prevent muscle cramps, headaches, and energy dips stemming from dehydration and low electrolytes. And we just don't have time for that. We're trying to have a fun, healthy, hydrated summer, so adding electrolytes to your water is key. Element has been my favorite electrolyte drink mix for years. I love that it isn't packed with sugar like so many other drink mixes on the market. Instead, it was formulated with optimal hydration in mind. Element has a science-backed ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium to help you replenish what you lose through sweat and move the needle towards your electrolyte goals. There are so many amazing flavors of Element, you're guaranteed to find one you love. My personal favorites are the grapefruit salt, which is a seasonal flavor that you can only get during the summer, so stock up now. Citrus salt, raspberry salt, but you really can't go wrong with any flavor. I add a packet to my big tumbler of water and sip it throughout the day to stay hydrated and energized. And if you want to take your electrolytes with a bubbly kick, you can try Element Sparkling. Element Sparkling delivers the same zero sugar electrolyte formulation you already know and trust in a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling water. With each can, you're taking a sip against sugar and stimulant-loaded drinks, turning the tide towards health. Get your free sample pack of Element with any drink mix purchase at drinkelement.com/balanceless. That's drinklmnt.com/balanceless. And if you're an Element insider, you have first access to Element Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. The next big thing, with me going early in the morning, I had to learn how to change my other routines to support that. So I initially, when I started working out in the morning, would wake up at like 5 a.m. I would pound a cup of coffee. I would groggily pack my gym bag, and then I would just go to the gym without any real plan. And I would kind of try to do stuff and it wouldn't really work. I tried that for the first couple of weeks that I was like a morning workout girly. Did not work. So I ended up switching up my routine a little bit where I would pack my gym bag the night before. And I used to have this coffee machine that had an alarm to it. So I would coincide the coffee alarm with my alarm clock, and it would start brewing the coffee like 10 minutes before my alarm went off. So by the time it was time for me to wake up, I could smell the coffee and my bag was packed and I just was a lot more alert and ready to go. And again, that really increased my confidence when I was able to walk into the gym when it was like 5 in the morning, just an ungodly hour. But that was what my life was like back then. So that was another change that I made to increase my confidence. And then the next thing that was the biggest change for my fitness girly archetype was figuring out what the fuck I was doing at the gym, because I had no idea. And so I really went to the drawing board when it came to education, and I started looking up workouts and I started watching YouTube videos to learn proper form. And I started doing really foundational movements with body weight so that I could understand what the movement was like before adding weight. And then I also ended up buying this book, and I'll link it in the show notes because it was so supremely helpful. It's called The New Rules of Lifting for Women. It's an old book, very old school, like fitness book, but it is super, super helpful for anybody who wants to start strength training and who wants to understand how to strengthen their body in that way. And I still use principles from that book in my workouts now, but it really taught me the basics. So I bought this book, I studied it, I started following the workout plans in it, and all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was at the gym at a time that I felt comfortable with. I was alert, I had a plan, I was able to freely try things out and test things out and learn in a space where I didn't feel self-conscious. I was really able to tap into that archetype. And less than a year later, I became one of those strong girls who could do the athletic things. And it really created a foundation of fitness that I've been able to build upon ever since then, just from tapping into that archetype, from becoming a version of that girl that was already within me. I had to give myself the tools and the resources to get started, but it really created this solid foundation that I've been able to build on ever since. And so through doing that, that is how I've been able to maintain consistency. That is how I've been able to stick with the habit. That is how I've been able to maintain that habit almost 15 years later, by giving myself the tools to succeed. But it really started with me figuring out, okay, what is a version of me that I can identify with who knows what she's doing here? What are the skills that I need to acquire? And how can I bridge the gap between where I am and where I need to be? And so fitness is often like a really easy way to do that. And so once I started becoming stronger, once I saw, oh, I can learn how to do new things, or I can do things that I previously thought I couldn't do or that were hard, then I started being able to apply it to other areas of my life, which gave me more confidence at work, which gave me more confidence in my social life. And then it just became a domino effect that kind of rippled throughout every other area of my life. So that's one example of how I've been able to implement archetype embodiment to reach a new level. Now, another example from my own life would be with my social life. So social stuff has actually been really, really hard for me my whole life. I have always been a very introverted, reserved type of person. And particularly when I was younger, I really, really struggled with isolation. I had a hard time making friends and connecting with people. And this is even something that's carried throughout my adult life. It's really only felt like the past year or two that I've started making progress here. And I felt like what kept me so stuck for so many years in my social life and feeling isolated and feeling like I couldn't make friends was because I identified so closely with this version of myself who I thought was awkward, who I thought was anxious, who I thought didn't have social skills. That was the identity that I chose to latch onto. And when I started embracing a new identity, that area of my life slowly started changing. So how I was able to start changing that identity from somebody who was socially awkward and anxious and who thought people didn't like her to somebody who is becoming a lot better at building community, and I'm definitely still a work in progress at this, I will say, is by embodying a new identity. So I started studying people who showed up socially in ways that I wanted to show up. One of my biggest role models in this has actually been my mom. My mom has the most like bubbly, outgoing personality. She is so magnetic. She just makes friends everywhere she goes. Everybody who meets her loves her. And I was always so jealous of that. And I always, when I was younger, wished that my personality was more like hers than it is in reality. Which sounds sad to say, but it was true. And although I'm still not necessarily naturally that, I have learned how to study her and people like her to figure out what qualities do they have that I can start implementing and identifying as so that I can be social in the same ways they are. So the first thing that I've learned from observing people like my mom is that they initiate things. So much of the isolation that I have felt in my life has been from feeling like I'm constantly being left out, or that nobody includes me in things, or nobody invites me to things. But I also wasn't doing any of the inviting. I wasn't doing any of the initiating. I would not initiate conversations with people. I wouldn't initiate plans with people. Or if I did initiate plans with people and maybe one time they said they couldn't make it, or that they had other plans, or there was something else to do, I would take it so personally if someone said no to like the one time I tried to initiate something. And I realized how much that was holding me back. And so learning how to initiate conversation, check on people, initiate plans, include people in things, and include direct language, the types of things that I would love to hear from people, if I start saying it, I just noticed that it created much stronger social ties. So I don't know about you, but if somebody invites me to something and they're like, oh, you can come if you want, or I'm down to hang if you want, for me, I'm like, keep it. You clearly don't like me or want to hang out with me. But if somebody says, hey, we're going to this thing at this time, I would love for you to come, that feels more like a direct invitation where I'm like, oh, they thought of me. They want me to go. Okay, great. I realized because I love to hear that, I need to become the person who says it to other people. And that creates more of what you want to see and what you want to receive. And when I started doing more of the inviting, the gathering, the initiating of connecting with people, I noticed that my connections became a lot stronger when I wasn't just sitting around waiting for everyone else to invite me to things. Now, another really big one was a few years ago when I was still living in LA. I went to this happy hour that was organized by this creator that I really like to follow on TikTok. And I liked her content because it was very much focused on, investing, entrepreneurship, things that I'm really interested in. And when I went to this happy hour and I was meeting her in person and talking to her in person for the first time, I was so struck at how kind and personable she was. Like, she took time to connect with every single person there, to have one-on-one conversations with us. And in having a one-on-one conversation with her, you just felt good about yourself. Like, she was super engaged. She was asking you questions to learn about you. She was giving you really, really genuine compliments. And I remember thinking, when people meet me or when people interact with me, I want them to feel as good as she just made me feel. And that rewired something in my brain for when I meet people and when I talk to people. I began worrying less about, am I saying the right thing and do people like me? And I started thinking, through interacting with me, do people like themselves? And it takes a lot of pressure off of social interactions and feeling like you need to say the right thing. So am I asking people genuine questions about how they're doing? If I ask them about their day, am I actually listening and engaging with them and ready to hear a real answer? Am I giving genuine compliments? I think about that Maya Angelou quote where it's like, people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. When someone walks away from an interaction with me, do they feel good about themselves? Do they maybe feel better than they felt after or before they came across me or before they had that conversation with me? And we can't control how other people are feeling, but I'm just saying, what is the energy that you're giving off to people? And if you are giving off an energy of kindness that makes people feel good, people are going to want to be around you, and it's going to create stronger bonds. So learning how to think more along those lines and less of, do people like me? Am I saying the right thing to make people like me? Has really helped relieve a lot of social anxiety for me and has made connecting with people a lot easier. Now, the last quality I would say of the archetype of the social butterfly that has also been good to implement that has also been hard is that people who are the social butterflies are really good at just letting the awkward moments roll. For so many of us who tend to be maybe a little bit more socially anxious, if we have an awkward moment, we tend to ruminate on it and we tend to replay it over and over. And here's the thing, everybody is awkward. Everybody says dumb stuff at some point. Everybody's fly is down at one point, or has something on their face at one point, or has like food in their teeth at one point, or maybe overshares a little bit and wish they said a little bit less. Like everybody has those moments. But the people who are really socially magnetic have those moments and let them just pass and roll off their back. As a person who naturally tends to be a little more socially anxious, we tend to ruminate on those moments over and over. And it's going to get in the way of you being present of what's happening right now. So learning how to embrace the awkward instead of having fear of the awkward, let it happen, let it roll off your back, move on to the next moment has been another key quality for improving kind of that social butterfly archetype. And over the past few years, as I've learned these lessons, that is where I've noticed that my social life is so much better. I've been able to build community more, and I've been able to just feel a lot more socially engaged and connect with people a lot more. So I'm still working on this. I would not say that that version of myself is like, the fitness version where it's so natural and we have become one the same way, Beyonce and Sasha Fierce have become one. But I'm well on my way and I'm learning how to implement it. And so that could hopefully be an example for you if you feel the same way, like that's something that you struggle with. Hopefully those examples helped you apply that to your life, especially because connection with other people is so important for all of us. We all feel better when we're more socially connected. So we have to learn how to release the archetype of I'm socially awkward, nobody likes me, I'm anxious, I'm this, and we have to embrace the archetype of I am a person, people like me, I like getting to know people, I connect with people effortlessly. And along similar lines, when it comes to the embracing awkwardness, something else that I've also learned is to let moments be awkward, but to not take on the identity of being awkward. So previously, if I would say something or do something that was a little bit awkward, I would tie that to who I am. And I'm learning to not do that. I'm learning to just let a awkward moment be awkward, but that I don't have to carry the identity of being awkward, which is really the core of what we're talking about today. Like, are you carrying the identity of who you want to be? And if you see qualities in yourself that you don't want, you don't have to carry the identity of that. So that's me divorcing myself from the idea of being awkward or being an awkward person.
Wellness can feel so complicated, but it doesn't have to be. There are so many easy ways to support your health, including drinking green tea, and my favorite is Lipton. Lipton Green Tea is a proactive wellness hack to support overall health. Just 2 cups a day delivers a quick and simple win on our individual health and wellness journeys thanks to the goodness of flavonoids. Flavonoids are naturally occurring bioactives found in tea, vegetables, and fruit. Just 2 cups of Lipton Green Tea a day is an easy way to get your flavonoids in and to support your overall health. In fact, 2 cups of Lipton Green Tea can help support health by providing approximately the same amount of flavonoids as eating 8 cups of raw kale. In the morning, I like to brew up a big batch of Lipton green tea and I'll sip on it iced throughout the day, which is so refreshing during the summer. And it helps me stay energized even during the afternoon when I tend to feel a bit of an afternoon slump. A lot of green teas can taste really bitter or a little too earthy, if you know what I mean. But Lipton Green Tea tastes amazing. The signature blend green tea has a hint of jasmine and is so smooth, but my personal favorite is the peach green tea. It is so good, hot or iced, and it has the perfect hint of fruitiness. Drinking 2 cups of Lipton Green Tea daily is a great ally for wellness and a simple way to up your everyday wellness habits. Try new Lipton Green Tea.
Let's talk about money. Summer is here, and when we're going out and we're traveling more, it can be really hard on our budget. So now is the time to get on top of things. I personally did not realize how much money I was spending on random subscriptions and things that were draining my budget until I tried Rocket Money.
This year, I switched to Rocket Money to help me manage my budget, and it's been so helpful at cutting back on unnecessary expenses like sneaky subscriptions. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills, which who does not want lower bills these days? So I usually like to have my weekly money dates on Fridays, and I will log into Rocket Money. I will track everything that I've spent over the past few days, and it just makes it so easy to make new financial habits and to better manage my spending and understand where my money is going. On Rocket Money, I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and I can see if I have something that I don't want to stay subscribed to. I can cancel it with the click of a button, and I never have to get on the phone with customer service or jump through hoops to cancel because Rocket Money will take care of it for me. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year, with over 500 million in canceled subscriptions. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/balanceless. That's rocketmoney.com/balancedless. rocketmoney.com/balanceless. When food is delicious, you genuinely want to eat it. And one of my favorite ways to make a meal or snack taste amazing is to include Philadelphia cream cheese. Philadelphia makes my favorite cream cheese. It's super creamy, tastes amazing, and is versatile enough to add to a variety of recipes and dishes. Now listen, I am a bagel and cream cheese connoisseur. It has been my favorite food since I was a child. May or may not be my hyperfixation food, but I love having Philadelphia cream cheese with so much more than just bagels because it makes everything creamy and delicious. The original Philadelphia cream cheese has been my go-to for as long as I can remember. I love dipping veggies and crackers in it. I love adding it to appetizers and party food like buffalo chicken dip, adding it to sauces and pastas to make them creamy. The possibilities are endless. And on Philadelphia Cream Cheese's website, they have so many amazing recipes. I plan on trying their pasta carbonara recipe with protein pasta soon. It looks so good, and I know the Philadelphia cream cheese makes it taste amazing. I also really love adding Philadelphia cream cheese to my sandwiches and my daily wraps to make them that much better. Now, for some upcoming parties I'm going to this summer, I also plan on bringing their 2-bite cheesecakes because it looks like the perfect mini dessert to share. Philadelphia makes everything creamier. Visit creamcheese.com for recipe inspiration and to purchase Philadelphia cream cheese so you can start adding it to your recipes at home.
I no longer identify as that. I just have awkward moments, and everybody has awkward moments. And then the last example of archetype embodiment that I want to give you that I've been able to implement is related to work. So you are at work with me right now because this show is my full-time job. But I did it for a really long time before it was my full-time job. And I had to learn how to operate and move very differently in this space. Making the leap from somebody who is a hobby podcaster to a full-time professional podcaster is a really big quantum leap in identity. And I had to do a lot of work to get to that point. And it started with really taking the product, which is this show, super, super seriously, learning how to become really, really consistent. And when I first started, I took it seriously, but I wasn't always the most prepared for an episode, or I wasn't always the most prepared for a guest, or I wouldn't necessarily take time to dig into their books or maybe other interviews that they've done. I very much treated it like a hobby. And when I decided that I wanted to do it full time, I had to make a real identity shift in how I approached this very show. So am I approaching it like it's a hobby that I do when I get off from work? Or am I approaching it like this is my full job to tell a story? And am I adequately prepared and competent and confident in how I tell this story? And so the archetype that I had to embody was almost this kind of like Oprah archetype. And that's not saying that I'm mimicking Oprah because I'm not. She and I are very different people. But I have had to learn how to almost treat this show like my version of the Oprah show when it comes to being really prepared and putting a lot of thought and a lot of effort into how I show up and how I create this show from start to finish. So it is no longer a show where I, turn off my work laptop for my corporate job and switch over to my personal laptop and just press play on record and just talk about stuff. There's now a strategy behind it. There is now a story that's being told from episode to episode that is woven all throughout. And I spend a lot of time scripting and researching and preparing. We spend a lot of time when we draft those show notes and we talk about those resources. We put a lot of time and effort into that so that it is professional and doesn't give hobby. But I really had to learn how to tap into that. I had to, when I come and I sit down to record, had to flip a switch that says, like, you are so good at this. You are a professional at this. This is your job. You are a host, not just a person who creates things or who says things on the internet. And just that mindset switch has changed so much of how I produce this show, how I show up professionally. And it is what has really enabled me to do this as a full-time career. So those are some of the examples of how I have been able to use archetype embodiment to become and identify as a version of myself who has the things that I want in life. I hope that those examples were helpful for you. But now I want to talk a little bit more about how you can use archetype embodiment to get the things that you want in your life. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, I think it's really, really helpful to focus on one area of your life at a time. I think it's really hard to have a big transformation that covers a lot of different areas at once. You're going to be far more effective if you pick one area of your life, again, whether that's relationships or wellness or professional, and you go all in on improving that. I think you're going to see a lot better results. So that is what I recommend starting off with before you create that archetype. So what is the area of your life that needs the most attention right now? What is the area of your life that if you could get that on lock, other things would feel better? Is it your wellness? Is it your work? Is it your friendships? Is it your relationships? I want you to pick that one area of life that you really want to focus on. And when you have that identified, I want you to then think about the alter ego version or that archetype version of yourself who has that area of her life together. So how does she spend her time in that area? What skills does she have? Or let's say you want to improve your professional life. If we want to get more specific with an example that can apply to you, you want to improve your professional life. Maybe you want a different type of job. Identify what job does that archetype version of yourself have? What skills and qualifications and education does she have that qualified her for that job? That is then going to give you the blueprint of what you need to do to become that person. So if you say, okay, she has these specific skills, she has studied these specific areas, she has a mentor in this area, or she has a network that is well connected in that area, then that is going to be a roadmap that tells you exactly what you need to do to tap into that archetype version of yourself. Or if you were like me and maybe you want to start with wellness, I actually recommend most people should probably start with wellness because, again, I think wellness is the foundation to everything, but I'm biased. Then lean into that healthy girl version of yourself. How does she spend her time? What do her habits look like? What kind of workouts does she do? And then I want you to take a pen and a piece of paper and map out, what do you need to do to become that? How can you tap into that? How can you start implementing that thought process and those habits from exactly where you are right now? Not saying that you need to have more money or this or that. How can you tap into the identity of that person from exactly where you are? Because then once you start doing that, more things will open up for you. So it really starts with beginning to identify, okay, what is it that you want to focus on? What is it that the archetype version of yourself has? And then how can you start tapping directly into that? A really helpful book, if you want to dig into this further, is called The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. Again, I will link that in the show notes. It's a super, super helpful book. He is someone who does a lot of sports performance coaching. So in the book, he does talk quite a bit about sports, but I do think that it can be applicable to everyday life. And he also really breaks down his version of kind of this alter ego embodiment with really tangible steps that you can follow to get there that is similar to what I'm describing here. But if you are also like a book girly and you like having something that is step by step, I highly, highly recommend you check out that book. Again, that's The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman, is going to be really helpful. So once you have that version of yourself identified, that alter ego, and the area of life that you want to focus on, you then need to start affirming that that is who you are. So you need to start coming up with some sort of mantra to affirm either that wellness girl version of yourself, or that social butterfly version of yourself, or that professional version of yourself that has that career that you want. You have got to start affirming that. So when I started taking podcasting more seriously and realized that it was something that I wanted to step into professionally, my mantra that would help me kind of flip a switch into becoming that like little Oprah archetype version of myself is at the top of my notes, because I used to always have notes for every episode. At the top of my notes, I would always write, "You are so good at this." And I would repeat it to myself 10 times. This was like a superstitious thing that I would do. I would repeat it to myself 10 times before I pressed record for every episode. And what I was doing was I was affirming to myself, I am stepping into this archetype of professional podcaster. This is what I'm meant to do. I am so good at this. I am confident at this. I am competent at this. So start thinking of whatever that affirmation is for you before you step into whatever arena or whatever stage your alter ego lives on. So what is that affirmation before you get up and go to the gym? What is that affirmation that you use to hype yourself up before you walk into a social gathering? Or what is that affirmation that you use before you step into, a big work thing or a job interview or whatever it is? And if you want to borrow mine, if you want to borrow the "you are so good at this," by all means, do it. I would write it on the top of my notes. I would also have it on a Post-it on my computer monitor where I could see it, and I would repeat it to myself over and over. And that is what would create the switch in my brain to step into that alter ego version of myself. So once you have that affirmation version of yourself, it's also really important to track your progress. So I really recommend journaling from the perspective of your alter ego self. So continuing to write out, how does your alter ego spend her day? What are the different milestones and successes that she reaches? And then as you start spending your day, your real days like that, as you start reaching those same milestones and those same successes, make sure you're tracking that progress. So at the top of this episode, I talked about how I compared my life now to those old journals and realized that it was the same. If I wouldn't have gone back and looked at those old journals, I wouldn't have even realized it. And I probably would be thinking about the different things that I want and don't have now, and would probably have a lack of gratitude for how far it's come. So it's really, really important to make sure that you're getting those thoughts out of your head onto paper, and that you're continuously looking back at where you came from so that you can track your own progress, and so that you can see the different ways that you have stepped into that archetype that you are creating. Now, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the letting go of the idea of being socially awkward as something that I have worked on. But a big part of embodying the archetype that is getting you what you want is learning how to release the current identities you have that are holding you back. So if you, like me, used to tell yourself that you were socially awkward all the time, or that you don't have any friends, or nobody likes you, or if you're really working on your wellness journey, but you're having a hard time being consistent, you tell yourself, "Oh, I'm so lazy, I'm so unmotivated, I'm so this, I'm so that." You need to identify what those identities are that are holding you back, and you need to release them. So maybe that means that you write it all down on a piece of paper and you shred it. I would tell you to burn it, but I'm not trying to have anyone burn their house down. Don't burn your house down and then go say Les told you to do it. I didn't. Don't use any fire. Just shred it, rip it up, recycle it. But get all of those things down and learn how to divorce yourself from the idea of those archetypes that are holding you back. So write it down, rip it up, throw it out because that's not who you are. And you may have moments where you feel awkward. You may have moments where you're not super motivated. You may have moments where you mess up at work. Learn how to allow those things to be a moment and stop identifying as the version of you who does not have what you want. You've got to start affirming and identifying the version of you that does have what you want. Because when you affirm that and when you lean into that, that is when you'll get more momentum to create that version of yourself who you want to be. Okay, friend, that is what I have for you today. All about getting what you want through becoming the person who you want to be, all about archetype embodiment. I mentioned a few books that were helpful. I mentioned The New Rules of Lifting for Women, which is a really great book for anyone who is trying to get on their fitness game and strength train. I mentioned The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman, two fantastic reads that I have linked in the show notes if you want to take these concepts a little bit further. I also have some other glow up episodes that I've done this summer similarly to this conversation that can really help you just take the next step to becoming the person you want to be. So we will make sure that we linked all of that in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode of Balanced Black Girls, please make sure that you subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube. Drop us a rating, drop us a review. Let me know what solo episodes you want to hear next for Solo Episode Summer. And I would also really, really love to hear what archetype you are embodying. So go to my latest post on Instagram at Balanced Black Girl Podcast. Leave me a comment letting me know what your archetype is in this season and how you are becoming her. I would love to give you some tips. I would love to cheer you on. So bring me on the journey along with you. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you are subscribed. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.